right, it's travel, and I'm off to British Columbia, to the city of Vancouver, in company with somebody who lived there. It's a writer and broadcaster, columnist with the Irish Times, Manchan Magan. Manchan, welcome to the programme.
Thank you so much, George.
Now, this is a city I've only been in once, and once in a bit. But I loved it, okay? It's a kind of, I mean, it's on the West Coast, so it's easy to say it's a Canadian San Francisco, but I think that's a reasonable comparison, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Vancouver is like, when people mention Canada, you know, I always think, have they been to British Columbia, and, you know, Vancouver's the capital of British Columbia, or have they been to the east? And there's almost no comparison, because, you know, we think of Canadians as straight-laced and their towns as being well-mannered. Vancouver is the exact opposite. It's like what actually happened is, you know, the oddballs and outsiders from all over the world, but particularly from America and Canada, so Buddhists, Trotskyites, tree huggers, you know, naturists, ended up in Vancouver, and particularly during the Vietnam Wars, anyone from America who wanted to escape ended up in Vancouver. So it's what happens when you have this really radical, creative group of people arriving in the most spectacular spot in the world. As you notice, when you arrive there, you think, okay, the feel of the people, they're hippie, they're alternative, but they know how to make money, you know, so they're not poor. And they happen to be living in this area where, like 100 years ago, 110 years ago, definitely, the Haida Indians were still living in this pristine jungle, this pristine forest that has never been touched. And they were still hunting there. They were fishing by the coast. They were hunting for bears and for wolves in the forest. And you're arriving there where, you know, as I say, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, the Haida were there.
Wow. Now, if we talk about it, there's a number of things. What makes it great for the visitor, right? If you're a kind of outdoorsy type, there's something for you. And then if you're something else, there's something for you. But talk to me about the outdoorsy part. Like, because when I got there, I'm not that outdoorsy because of advancing age, but like the first thing I did was like you can get a plane to Vancouver Island.
That's right.
It's a great thrill. The other thing was this suspension bridge. Have you done that?
I have. So as you say, I mean, the first thing you notice when you arrive, and no matter what you're going to arrive, you're right downtown, and you see beside downtown there's a park. Okay, there's parks beside many downtowns, but this park has primordial forest. It's got trees that are 600-year-old, hundreds of them, like 4,400
Stanley
hectares.
Park,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, and in there there's an aquarium with beluga whales. So you're realizing I'm surrounded by skyscrapers, ultra modern city, coffee shops, and that sort of San Francisco. You feel, you know, sense that you talked about. But there is this park, Stanley Park, and then, as you say, just straight north of that, you can take the Lionsgate Bridge to the new chic, ultra rich part of northern Vancouver, where all the millionaires are, where all the actors living. And there, it's only there's this famous, the Capilera Gorge Bridge, and this is the bridge that it's always famous because Margaret Thatcher insisted on going over twice. It's a wobbly, sort of squeamish-making, vertigo-inducing.
Well, I have to tell you, I was scared out of my wits.
It's intense
because it's a rope bridge. It's like something you'd see Harrison Ford go across as Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? But you're hanging on for grim death. It's a great experience.
It's really rare for us, particularly, as you say, because we're not used to the outdoorsy, and we think you're going to have all the gear and you're going to have that spirit. But you sort of get infused by it when you arrive in Vancouver and you see Stanley Park and you see the seawall. So there's a beautiful promenade, 22 kilometres running along the whole coast. You're going to see, on a good day, you'll see whales. You'll see orca whales from there, or you'll see these great Pacific grey whales, and then you'll see everyone out. So, you know, there'll be beautiful girls in bikinis on rollerblades pushing kids in wheelchairs. You'll see old men with long grey hair and shorts, you know, pulling these carts. They have these carts that they pull all the toddlers. So the toddlers who go to preschool, they put them in these metal carts, brightly sort of painted metal carts, and bring them through along the seawall into the forest. So everyone is getting involved in the outdoor life.
Now, there's a mountain there, and I remember we went up in a cable car. What was that?
Oh, you got the whole thing done. This is brilliant. Exactly. So your first thing you see is Stanley Park, then you go straight over to this capillary, to the gorge, the walk across the gorge, and then straight beyond that is Grouse Mountain. And there's a cable car right up to the top of Grouse Mountain. So in theory, in summertime, you could be sunbathing on the beach. You could actually be skinny dipping on the beach. There's a nudist beach right downtown. Take your sort of go across Stanley Park and then take that cable car up. You can be skiing within 20 minutes of being downtown. And if you're not, I don't ski. So from Grouse Mountain, there's also amazing walks. I mean, and now what they've got into in a big way is mountain biking. And again, we think mountain biking, it requires practice. There's all sorts of basic trails. They do it in a way so that it isn't intensive, it isn't frightening.
I love your enthusiasm because I share, but can't speak of it in quite the same enthusiastic way because I don't know it well enough. But I loved it, right? Now, the other thing is there are people who don't like bikes and cable cars and, walking and all that sort of stuff. The city itself, then, see, I really enjoy eating. I love eating.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you weren't. I thought you were going to be disgusted by Vancouver. I thought it was going to be too radical or too left wing for you. And because the food, it's all about fusion, so you don't go there for your pure French steak or something. The best thing to do, across from Stanley Park, let's say you're still in downtown, you take one of these water buses. So it's so ecological. Like you'll see everyone's out cycling, everyone's rollerblading. The one thing they won't be doing is fishing from the coast because fishing might damage a poor fish. And it's all about caring for everyone. So you take one of these water taxis then across to Granville Island. And Granville Island is just the old industrial sort of area, huge warehouses just south of downtown. And that has been converted into the equivalent of, Pier 51 in San Francisco. Or the Pike Street Market in Seattle. So it's big, it's outdoor markets with the best, the freshest of food from the Okanagan Valley. This is this lush valley of fruit and vegetables just in the south, about 150 miles east of Vancouver. And then you'll also get the lobster fishermen who are going down from the Charlotte Islands through the range of Vancouver Islands, catching crab and lobster, will bring it straight into Granville Island and we will do it whatever way you want up for you. There's a sake, there's a specialist sake maker there, because what has happened now is Vancouver has become inundated with the Asians.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you. Again, my San Francisco kind of connection, a great Chinatown.
Yeah. I mean, they're so clever. This was what happened. Do you remember in the 90s when Hong Kong was going to be given its freedom, or China was going to take over? And all of that, millions and billions of money. This is like 120 years of wealth in Hong Kong decided, where are we going to move our money? San Francisco had expanded. Seattle was sort of grim and industrial. They decided they were going to bring all this money to Vancouver. So in the 90s, 60% of the immigrants were Hong Kong. And these were not poor. These were filthy rich. So all those massive new gleaming skyscrapers you're seeing were built with Hong Kong money as investments in the long term. But they also brought their own culture. So they created a Chinatown, just like, as you say, all those cities have, which has the usual sort of chaos of street markets, of sort of, tiny Asian grocery shops, and then these beautiful, these parks, these parks that sort of echo the very best Ming Dynasty parks from Suzhou in China. There's one, Dr. Sun Yat-sen Garden, which is just so tranquil. So you get the chaos of the Asian world with these beautiful tranquil gardens.
There's a couple of cribs here. Apparently Victoria, according to Dermot Daly, is the capital of BC, is it?
Yeah, it's the state capital, but you can go around the world and you can find the state capital. So, like Berlin has now Berlin is the classic example where both the state has moved to where people think of the capital. But so Victoria is a weird place. It's transforming. Like when I was there 12 years ago, it was so musty and so Victorian and so English. It's the garden capital, so it's got all these show-off gardens.
Apparently there's a Granville honey lager. Is there a Granville Island?
Oh, you see, all over sort of Granville Island, there's a load of different microbreweries setting up, and these sort of well-meaning breweries. The most famous and the best one was the original Yaletown Brewing Company in Yaletown. But the whole thing was founded because, as I say, 110 years ago, this man, Gassy Jack, brought a barrel of whiskey down on a canoe and set it up in Vancouver, and everything else has followed him.
Sorry, about Grouse Park. Michael Mayo walked up it. He said it's worse than Croagh-Patrick. Well, none of us would walk up it.
No, I mean, you see, you find yourself doing more outdoorsy things than you normally would in British Columbia. But what's weird, and this really needs to be taken into account, like a town like Banff, which is just for skiing, and again, I'm not a big skier, but it was just, as a town, it was just set up to service the national park. Now, there's towns all over British Columbia like this, small little towns, okay, and they look so quaint. A lot of the original 1890s, 1910 wooden buildings will be there, and you think it's safe, and you decide to go out for a walk. We don't realise the minute you leave the town edges or the city edges, you're back on the food chain, okay? There's 15,000 grizzly bears in British Columbia. They're hungry, and if not, there's black bears. I was constantly, as I said, I used to look after this commune up in the Rockies near Nelson, a beautiful town in the east of British Columbia. And the black bears used to come out to raid our apples, and we'd have to go out and shake them down. Now, they know how to deal with black bears and grizzlies. We don't. I mean, there's still wolves. At night, if you're up in the mountains, you're going to hear the wolves.
Okay. I prefer you not tell me about this. Okay. I'm afraid of, like, poodles. So can you imagine what
you bring pepper spray if you're out on Vancouver Island.
But this will demonstrate sort of. I get a lot of criticism because I like my comforts, right? I stayed in a wonderful hotel, which is not cheap, and had a fantastic restaurant. But it's got a great reputation because I stayed in its sister hotel in San Francisco, the Fairmont, downtown Vancouver.
Yeah. I was taught
not cheap.
No, and a famous hotel and a great history to it, built by the railway company. I think it opened in 1939, and the first guest was your namesake, was George the Sixth. It's all fortified, sort of castle effect, a load of chandeliers, a load of gilt, a load of gold. Yeah. When you said you were going to really impress
me, you're a kind of a lefty, so like you wouldn't be seen dead inside the Fairmont.
No. If I did have a bit of money, and I remember at the time I was sleeping in the dirtiest dives whenever we'd go back to Vancouver, and I wanted to stay in the Sylvia Hotel. This was a hotel built in 1912. You passed it the whole time. It's this beautiful brownstone, ivy-clad building right in downtown, right on the waterfront. And I don't know, it's just because the rooms are still kind of small because it was built in 1912, but you feel the first spirit of Vancouver without the grandiloquence of the Fairmont.
Did I go up some kind of skyscraper building or something, and was I looking out the window around Vancouver? I don't know where it was, can't remember.
And you're not thinking of the famous view from on top of Grouse Mountain, no?
No, I'm talking of a building, and I paid $10 to go up or something.
Yeah, you might. And that wasn't the Seattle Sky Needle, no.
Might be.
I don't know. Yeah, which is terrible. Was there the most cheesy talk in the elevator on the way up?
Now, my guest is Manchan Magan, a travel writer, television presenter and writer for the Irish Times. But we're talking about Vancouver. We're not going to talk about, we might do another day, or the other places you can go. Two things I did, which I should mention. I then took a week on the wonderful Rocky Mountain, the train, all around the Rockies from Vancouver. The other thing is, Vancouver, I think, is something like the 5th biggest port or something in North America. So when you're there, you do see this commercial side of the city, but wonderful for cruises to Alaska.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean,
Alaska's only up the road, like.
And the best way to do that trip is actually you drive up, So that's that famous road that was built after Pearl Harbor, and America realized they needed to get control of Alaska. They needed a direct road through Alaska, and so they took old logging tracks and built a road onto them. And for anyone young, in the past, the whole idea of Irish students, we used to try and drive down to the centre of, from Dublin maybe to the Sahara, but now you can't with Algeria. Now, a phenomenal thing to do is you arrive in either Seattle or Washington and head north to Fairbanks, to Alaska. You're going
on the road?
On the road. It's now
What's
tarred.
The road called, do you know?
It's called the Alcan, the American-Canadian road. And what is it? It's 2,100 miles from Vancouver to Is it Fairfax? Fairfax.
No, it's Fairbanks.
Fairbanks, well done.
Right.
You know, so when I was there, even about 12 years ago, some of the road was gravel. It was very rough, and you had to, you know, kit your car out. Now there's petrol. I mean, you're only going to get petrol once a day, so you need to know exactly what distances are. You're going to meet these big horned sheep on the road and mountain goats, and you're going to see black bears along the trail. So it's, I mean, you're going into pure wilderness, but you go right up there. You go past the Charlotte Islands, and the thing is, Irish people are going to be doing this now because one of the last towns you meet in Canada is Edmonton, and you know so many of our young sons are going to work in Edmonton.
Alberta.
No, Edmonton. Edmonton is in British Columbia.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right.
Right,
somebody will tell us. All right. Okay. But Edmonton, they held the Commonwealth Games there in 1954.
Oh, that must have been wilderness there. like it's still really out there.
I think Roger Bannister beat John Landy in the mile. Anyway, listen.
You drive up and you take the ferry back along the islands, down through Alaska, and then along through the Queen Charlotte Islands. You're going to see the most beautiful views you've ever seen.
The great thing because a lot of people don't like cruises because they get seasick, like me. If you take a cruise to Alaska, they go up what they call the Inner Passage.
That's right.
So there's no waves.
Exactly.
So it's great. The Lionsgate Bridge was built by the Guinness family, says Ross and Ballahadreen. Owen walked up the grouse grind at 6 a.m. Drunk as a skunk. Michael asked a good question. Spring or summer to visit?
Yeah. So, you know, you remember a lot of TV industry and films went there and they sort of call it Brollywood. It does rain a lot. The climate is very like London. It's slightly milder than Ireland, but, you know, it does rain. So, you know, spring or summer. The problem once you get out of Vancouver in summer, you get a lot of black midges and you get these things, stink bugs, these slow, primordial, desert-like, dinosaur-like cockroaches, flying cockroaches. They're just annoying. But so, no, I mean, spring is ideal.
Simon Ballantyre has been in Edmonton. It's in Alberta.
Very good.
The only reason I know is my knowledge of athletics. Help me on that one. It's amazing how knowledge of athletics helps you on geography.